All right. We have a number of new people on here this week. Um, Most people chat in any questions that they weren't able to send in. Remember, send your questions in via the form. It's on multiple pages of the members site, the members only site. That's the site that only you have access to. So there's multiple pages that have a blue box where you can submit your Zoom call questions. Please do that on there. If you can think of them beforehand, but I know as we go through this, you think of question. You can chat those questions in, um, and I'll do my best to answer them. Um, and if I don't know the answer, I will tell you that too. So okay, another housekeeping that we always talk about, make sure you look at the member site for any updates. We have talked about the checking your glucose and following that for some time and the free access that you have to all the courses. So make sure you take advantage of that as well. And look at the Zoom calls or the blog posts too. There could be questions that are answered on the blog posts that you might have. So you don't have to wait till next Wednesday for your question to be answered. Okay, question number one. What would stop chronic skin itching on large areas of the body? Further, could this be caused by a dysfunction of my kidneys or liver from my previous diagnosis of Hodgkin's lymphoma? For several weeks, I've had almost constant itching, treating it with coffee enemas, lanolin, arnica, and rife itching programs with little success. The skin is also very dry. The almost constant itching is rather painful and causing stress. So there's lots of reasons for skin for itching, skin rashes, depending if you have a rash or not, or it's raised, and lots of different questions that should be asked. But the key component here is this component right here, the lymphoma. So for some reason that isn't fully understood, that one of the symptoms of lymphoma, all sorts of types of lymphoma, is itching, skin itching. Matter of fact, that can be the first sign of lymphoma. Let's say a person doesn't have a diagnosis, doesn't know that they have any issue, and then they have this severe itching, and that's what ends up bringing to the doctor. They do a blood test, and then they find out they have lymphoma, elevated white blood cell count, etc. So having a previous diagnosis of lymphoma, that's the first thing that you need to look at. Is there an uptick of lymphoma? And you want to go in and get some blood work done. That's the first thing you should think of, because that is so common with lymphoma. Now, there's some people with lymphoma that never get this symptom, and there are some that do. Other pieces of skin itching and itching all over your body can be blockage of the bile duct. So if the bilirubin on a blood test is elevated, often a person will see severe itching throughout their body. So that's another issue. There's all sorts of reasons a person could have allergic reaction to something and have itching all over their body. Issues with inflammation in the gut could cause itching in the skin. There is a gut skin connection neurologically and metabolically. So I guess the first step for me with somebody with a previous diagnosis of lymphoma would be to get a full blood workup and examination to make sure that lymphoma isn't raising its ugly head. That would be the first thing. If that has been done and you feel like, oh no, I talked to my oncologist, I did get blood work, and they don't have anything to do with that, then you have to investigate other things, and we should set up a phone consultation, because we may want to investigate gut issues, food sensitivities, etc. My son needs some orthodontic work done, and I'm wondering if metal braces or Invisalign is the better option. Is there one that is less toxic to have in his mouth? Well, I think the Invisalign is less toxic. It's a plastic tray, but I think you're getting less toxins from that than you're getting from metal braces. And the reason is the metal braces is stainless steel that's holding onto your teeth with a clamp. You have to use a paste that is going to basically cement them onto the teeth. So there's toxins that are involved with that. That being said, there's sometimes that Invisalign won't work for people. So you have to talk to multiple different orthodontists to see what is going to be best for that person's mouth, because, depending on what is needing to be done, if it's a widened palate, if you might need to get an expander beforehand. There's just lots of different things that go on with that. And I'm not going to give advice about orthodontic work. But from a toxicity level, I think you're better off with the Invisalign. This is a follow on the question below. I am having severe leg cramps almost early in the morning on a daily basis. When I finished my chemo 3 years ago, I was told to take, I believe, 800 milligrams of calcium every day. I take AlgaCal Plus and OsteoForce with T-Vigo and ADK. Also, so I take them on alternate days. I have taken 4 infusions in Zometa, 6 months apart. The last infusion was nearly a year ago. I believe I may be taking too much calcium, and my potassium levels may be off, affecting this. Am I taking too much calcium? What are your thoughts about adding potassium? I took an MRI of my feet and legs on the recommendation of the podiatrist to see if I had plantar fasciitis, but have not received the results yet. Your thoughts there. My legs ache when I walk or have to climb steps. It does not stop me from walking and doing exercise in my right leg, I believe. Has some neuropathy as a result of the chemotherapy received in 2020. Could aching indicate vascular problems? What do you recommend? So, how much calcium should a person take, even if they have osteoporosis or osteolytic metastasis of cancer? The common thought in nutritional circles for a long time has been that you have to increase the calcium if you have osteoporosis because you have a deficiency in calcium. Well, if you listen to me for very long at all, you'll understand that that was just been debunked a long time ago by numerous studies and by numerous just understanding the physiology of osteoporosis, even understanding the physiology of bone growth. So like the OsteoForce product, that's a product from Designs for Health. It doesn't have a high dose calcium. It has other things that will help build bone, other nutrients and minerals in there. It doesn't have a high dose calcium. The ADK and the T-Vigo have no calcium in it. So really your real calcium source is the 800 milligrams of calcium that you're getting in the AlgaCal Plus and combined with what's in the OsteoForce. That's really probably too much calcium. So I would agree with you. Obviously, whoever asked this question has read some things about calcium because they're asking the question, is this too much calcium? I think the answer is yes. The studies that have been shown where they used to recommend 1,500 milligrams of calcium for women, especially postmenopausal, because you have an increase in osteoporosis postmenopausal. But that has to do with the fluctuation of hormone levels that increases inflammation. So it is really decreasing inflammation in the bone that's going to help the bone uptake calcium. So it's not increasing blood calcium levels, because if you're going to take a whole bunch of calcium, you're pumping a whole bunch of calcium into the blood. Your body cannot have calcium in the blood like that. Remember, your blood has to be buffered. That's going to be too much alkalinity in the blood. It's going to push it to the tissues. Calcium is going to be pushed to the tissues and the blood vessels themselves, and it can cause, and it has been shown to cause, uh, atherosclerotic lesions. So there's been a huge increase in heart issues and myocardial infarctions in women that have been taking, the recommended 1,500 milligrams of calcium. It just literally skyrocketed. In fact, there's been books written about it, about how you should not be taking that much exogenous, meaning it's supplemental form of calcium. Plus, the source of calcium is usually calcium carbonate, which makes it even worse. So no, I think you should probably drop back on your calcium levels. Certainly, you could take potassium, but maybe even better yet, look at your blood test. If you are not deficient in potassium, you probably shouldn't be taking any extra potassium if that's not an issue. Other reasons why you can have legs cramping and things is not usually a calcium issue. If it is a mineral deficiency, it's usually a magnesium deficiency or an iron deficiency. So you have to look at your blood test and make sure that you aren't anemic. So people that are anemic, meaning they have low iron, they will end up having leg cramps and things like that because of the anemia. Now, you're in a catch-22 if you have a current ongoing cancer, because you don't want to necessarily be pumping a whole bunch of iron into the system, because iron can be a fuel source of cancer. But if you're kind of post cancer, you're in a state of remission, there's nothing wrong with taking some iron if you are anemic. So you take iron based upon your blood test. A CBC would be the blood test that I'm talking about. Also, a CBC and a complete metabolic panel would show calcium levels and potassium levels too. Other reasons why a person can have leg cramps, I said magnesium deficiency. That's where like Epsom salt baths would really be helpful for a person with that. And post neuropathy. So you could have neurological issues causing leg cramps because there's damage to the neurons from a chemical damage from chemotherapy. So post-chemo patients tend to have damage of neurons, especially large diameter afferent neurons. That's the type of neuron that carries pain and carries tingling. It carries hot and cold back to the brain, back to the spinal cord, and back to the brain. And those are the highly metabolic and the most easily damaged with chemotherapy and with diabetic neuropathy as well. So doing ion pro waves, which leads to the question of the effectiveness of the foot detox, doing ion pro waves can be helpful for people who have neuropathy. So I would say do that. Also, that little piece of equipment called the Rebuilder, which stimulates the nerve to help grow back if you have neuropathy. That's not going to help if you have, anemia or a mineral deficiency. But if you have neuropathy that has to do with the damage of the neurons, then the Rebuilder would help with that too. There's other issues that can cause this too, intermittent claudication. We discussed this last week on last week's Zoom call or the week before. So make sure you look back at that as well. I have tons of inflammation. Not sure if it's due to chemo pills or mistletoe, but I'm having tons of pain, except the day after the IV vitamin C infusion. I have liposomal curve clear on hand. If I take that internally, would that help? If so, how much? Except this chemo pill, I can't hardly take the greens first shake. Any ideas? Have to have a PET scan. The doctor wants a baseline. Are there any supplements that I should discontinue before the scan? Last question first. No, there's nothing you should discontinue before the scan. I would go ahead and get the scan. I think that would be good to see what's going on. I know that chemo changes your taste buds. It really changes your taste buds from a neurological perspective. So therefore, some things just don't taste well and you don't feel good taking them and eating. That's a problem. I understand that. To give you any ideas, try to change the taste by adding other things to it. Berries, chocolate, I don't know, something like that. Cocoa powder, give you a different taste. That would be my suggestion. The liposomal Curcuclear, would that be good to decrease inflammation? So what would be good to decrease inflammation are different flavonoids. So curcumin, yes, so the liposomal Curcuclear would be good. How much should you take of that? Well, really, you really can't take too much of it. You really want to get a high dose in to decrease inflammation, but it can be good if you have some other flavonoids at home too, to have those on hand too, because it can be kind of a synergistic effect if you use other flavonoids too, like boswellia, EGCG from green tea extract can be helpful. The barks like pine bark extract can be helpful. Quercetin can be helpful. Bromelain, which is an enzyme, and that can be helpful. And then bromelain, which is the product from beets, which the aloe vera created. That is very helpful for some people with pain too. That is called Limitless by aloe vera. That can be very helpful. That's helped a lot of people with pain. CBD, THC, those are all the things that you think of to decrease inflammation and to decrease pain. My husband recently had his left tonsil with a tumor removed, not Hodgkin's lymphoma. He has been 13 days now and just getting off the pain meds and able to return to normal foods. There remains swelling in the neck and lymph nodes. When may he return to the hyperbaric oxygen treatments, high-dose vitamin C drips, and far-infrared sauna treatments? Thank you kindly. I would say you could start those now for sure. I don't think you're gonna have any issue with hyperbaric oxygen. I don't think you're gonna have any issue with the vitamin C drips. The only thing that you might have issue with is the infrared sauna, because it is increasing your temperature and can increase some inflammation temporarily. So just watch that. If you feel like you're getting a little swelling, I would go slow on the sauna. That's all I would say. But otherwise, everything else you could go ahead and take. Been praying for him. I know he was going to go ahead with that surgery, so I'm so glad that he's doing well. I had estrogen receptor, progesterone receptor positive breast cancer. I am seeing a doctor for emotional trauma and anxiety. She noticed in her scans and her thermography that my pituitary is not functioning properly. She recommends these supplements: standard processed pituitary PMG, hypothalamus PMG, and hypothalamics. So 3 are taken 3 times at breakfast, 3 times at dinner, possibly for 3 weeks. Nervous because of hormone receptor positive breast cancer, and wondering if that may affect my hormones or conflict with the large supplement regimen that I'm currently on. Pituitrophin is derived from bovine pituitary extract. That sounds a little scary. I lived in Germany during the mad cow outbreak. What are your thoughts on these supplements all taken together? Would it be safer or more effective to just run the pituitary normalizing programs on the right? So I know you are taking a lot of supplements, so I know you are concerned about adding more to your regimen. So you have to weigh that out as well. So what are the standard process pituitary PMG and hypothalamus, PMG and hypothalamus? They are what PMG stands for protomorphogen. So protomorphogen is the organ glandular um, uh, uh, nutrition. So this is glandular nutrition. So it's organ nutrition. And yes, it is going to be derived from bovine tissue, meaning it's going to be derived from cows. So this is cow pituitary, cow hypothalamus tissue, and that's what you are consuming. Is there a danger with this? People think, oh my gosh, this could lead to mad cow disease. Is there a danger to this? No, there is no danger to that for that at all. I would not be concerned with that at all. They take it from clean organic animals. All the companies that we've ever used, we don't sell standard process because of other reasons, but that this is a good product. You don't have to have any issues taking that. Is there a danger in taking pituitary or hypothalamus nutrition if you have ER/PR positive cancer? No, there's no danger in that whatsoever either. That's not going to increase your estrogen production. So I would not worry about that. It's just building blocks for your pituitary. So I don't think there's any harm in taking them. So would it be easier just to would it be safer to run the pituitary? I wouldn't think it's safer. Would it be cheaper for you? Yes. Would it be less supplements? Yes. Could you do both? Yes. So that's a decision you'll have to make. But there isn't any harm in taking this. I shared with you my artemisinin protocol. I am starting in a few days. I also ran it by my local functional doctor, and she has many on artemisinin for many things. I was just wondering if you had any comments or things to add. I know there was someone else on here that had bone metastatic issues. I still have not heard back from the oncologist, so no reason to wait any longer. Pain is high level at times and managing. So again, like we shared last week or the week before, I think artemisinin is great. And there's no harm in adding it to your protocol. It has been shown, matter of fact, I think I just updated a blog post on artemisinin with some new information. So look at that blog post. I don't think there's really any harm in taking artemisinin unless a person is just taking way too many. So that would be my only concern is if a person's just taking way too much stuff, then maybe artemisinin is not best to add to your protocol. But yeah, go for it. I think it's a great addition. Artemisinin is not going to be really, you said your pain isn't high level. Artemisinin isn't really a pain decreaser. No. So maybe think of some of the other things that I talked about in the other question about helping pain. When I had my port surgery on June 7th, they told me after that I had been given antibiotics. I knew I should start probiotics, but I felt ill immediately and forgot to do so. In hindsight, some of my symptoms, itchy eczema type rash on my chest, torso, armpits, vaginal, rectal itch, and white tongue be from that initial antibiotic. I took lots of probiotics through the month of July when I was on IV antibiotics for staph, but those initial symptoms remain. I am following a high protein, low carb, mostly meat and vegetables and fat. I do about 2 cups mango in a smoothie and maybe an apple a day. Does this sound like yeast or candida? If so, how do I get rid of it? It can be certainly a candida infection, given your amount of antibiotic use. It can be not just candida, just microbiota, just overgrowth of different things and an imbalance in your microbiota. So that's very possible. Also, being on that many antibiotics quite possibly have damaged your intestinal lining. and cause some not only dysbiosis of the intestinal tract, but issues with your tight junctions of the epithelial cells. It's called leaky gut issues. And you certainly could have developed food sensitivities. Maybe you had food sensitivity before that, and this just brought it out and increased the amount of antibodies that you had to different foods. It's not uncommon, even if a person didn't take a lot of antibiotics. So you're not protected from damage to the epithelial lining of the gut by taking probiotics. So probiotics can help if a person has to be on antibiotics. Probiotics are definitely recommended and will be help to manage the degree of dysbiosis that a person will suffer from being on longer term antibiotics. However, it doesn't give you protection against the damage that's gonna ensue on the epithelial lining of the gut, which can then lead to things crossing the gut border that shouldn't, peptides of foods crossing the gut border that shouldn't, and you developing antibodies to those foods. And now you have to manage that and start working on healing that. So, in a perfect world, I would run the Cyrex panel, array 2, array 3X, array 4, array 10 on a person that came to me with these type of symptoms. You have to get to some causes, some reasons why. I know those things can be expensive, so a lot of people can't do those things. Then you have to decide how you're going to try to handle those. Try to, clean up the most common food sensitivities. Get rid of gluten in your diet. Get rid of dairy in your diet. See how that works. Do a food elimination type process. So you have to work through those things. Call with me might be more appropriate. I asked a couple of weeks ago about the reason and cure for cystic acne. I've not been able to find this Zoom call again. Could you please advise? So cystic acne is definitely linked to gut issues. So this is the gut skin pathway that is so common. People that have dysbiosis can end up with rashes and acne. People that have H. pylori, very common that they end up with skin rashes and acne, hair loss, all sorts of things like that are really common. So that gut, the gut health, going back to that gut health, is the key component. Dysbiosis is an issue, and antibodies are an issue. Decreasing inflammation would be an important thing. I have always, since receiving it in April, been using my Rife and your programs overnight. However, I get intense pain. I think this now get intense pain when I use the Rife now. It's painful enough to not be able to sleep and already struggling with insomnia. The pain is tolerable during the day since I'm not trying to sleep, but I'm trying to be more active and shouldn't sit for 8 to 9 hours. I don't want to stop using the Rife at night. Could you please advise? I would just say move the bulb a little bit further away. Look at the blog post that says good pain, bad pain. That would be, going back to the blog and searching pain and look at my video on good pain, bad pain. I think that would help. And you have to sleep. So you have to balance that with sleep. Maybe start with moving the bulb a little bit farther away and see if that will decrease the pain, and you'll still get some benefit from using the bulb. I'm still having staph-induced insomnia. I was told this would go away when the infection was gone, but according to cultures, I've been infection-free, no staph, for over a month and off of antibiotics for almost 2 weeks. It's getting very slowly better, as I am up to almost 4 hours a night the last few days. However, I need more and better sleep in order to heal. I never fall asleep before 2:30. And even when I go to bed at 9 o'clock, like you advise. And do not use electronics before bed, except listening to my Bible to help try to fall asleep. I'm struggling with restless legs, and which contributes to the insomnia. I am using magnesium oil in my legs and doing some bedtime yoga. These sometimes seem to help, but not always. Can you advise on both the insomnia and restless legs? Well, let's restless legs. I know magnesium oil was a really hot topic about 10 years ago when it first came out. Personally, we carried it in our store. We used it on some patients. I tried it personally. The problem is magnesium minerals are in the form of a salt. So minerals have to be bonded to something, and the magnesium in the magnesium oil, I think, is a magnesium chloride. So it's a salt, and it dries, and then you have a salt on your skin. So you have this white kind of salty layer on your skin, which can become itchy, and it's not really well absorbed. So I grew to be not a fan of magnesium oil, and I discontinued carrying it and discontinued recommending it because I don't think it was shown to be well absorbed at all. And I think the magnesium salt in water is better absorbed, because oil is not absorbed well through your skin. So I think taking magnesium baths in an Epsom salt is better for you as far as your absorption of magnesium, and it can be more soothing to your skin, and you get less itch. Though you still may have some magnesium salts on your skin after an Epsom salt bath, I don't think you get as much as using the oil. That's just my take. Secondly, so go back to a question that an earlier listener had about restless legs issues. So making sure that there isn't any other causes of restless legs, which might have nothing to do with magnesium, might have to do with iron, might have to do with other minerals, might have to do with other things. Also with the insomnia, there's lots of different beneficial herbs for insomnia that can help calm your brain. You could try using GABA, that can help calm your brain, knowing full well that GABA is a large molecule, and if it does work to help calm your brain, that does indicate that you actually have blood-brain barrier issues. But a lot of people have blood-brain barrier issues, and if you're on antibiotics for that long and dealing with everything you have, you might very well have blood-brain issues. There's nothing wrong with using it to your advantage and getting GABA across there, which is a calming neurotransmitter. Using different using melatonin, if you're not using melatonin, can be beneficial. Using higher dose melatonin, which can be good for cancer, might be beneficial. Trying to get some exercise before bed. I think I have a number of blog posts on insomnia, and there's lots of different things on Google that you can find that can be helpful for insomnia too. And I think that was the only question in there. When I was struggling so much in June, I added a lot of supplements in order to feel better. If I send you a current list, can you advise me on what to get rid of? Sure, you'd send that with a cheek swab. So send in a cheek swab with the current list of supplements, and I will check and see what I think you should be doing next. Make sure you send in the form with the cheek swab as stated on the member site, please. How does one know if their gallbladder and liver are working efficiently? You speak much about that in the 7 pages of detox, but I'm missing how to know if they are functioning well. The pooping one is obvious, the others not so much. So how to know if your gallbladder is working? Well, there are some questions that you could ask. I'm actually making some new videos on gallbladder function. But questions you can ask are, how do I tolerate fatty foods well? Yeah, I have no trouble. Or some people might say, I think I just talked to somebody the other day and said, no, I tolerate them really well. I said, good, then so you can eat fatty foods without any problems. Oh no, I never eat fatty foods. Why don't you eat fatty foods? Because they cause me problems. Well, then you don't tolerate them very well. So if you can't tolerate fatty foods, it's a sign of gallbladder issues. Certainly, there's blood tests that can show that you have gallbladder issues, meaning that if you have elevated bilirubin, then we know you have some blockage in the bile duct, most commonly. Um, but functional gallbladder issues, the most appropriate way to diagnose functional gallbladder issues is to get an ultrasound. So you get an ultrasound of your gallbladder to see, really how much sludge slash gallstones that you have in a gallbladder. That would be the thing to do. So I have gallbladder flush information on the seven phases of detox course that you could look at too, and just supporting the gallbladder. And all of you are supporting the gallbladder if you're doing coffee enemas and you're doing castor oil packs and hot packs over your gallbladder liver area. So that's what we have, all of you doing that. So if you are doing that, you are supporting the gallbladder. How do you know if your liver is working correctly? Well, there isn't any test out there as far as lab to know how your liver pathways are, how efficient they're working. When we look at your genetics, we look at, do you have any defects in the cytochrome P450 and the PON pathway and the NAT pathways, et cetera, to look if you have defects in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 liver pathways. But that doesn't tell us functionally how efficiently they're working. Now we can get some clues to liver functionality by looking at a complete metabolic pathway, and the AST, ALT, GGT, alkaline phosphatase will tell us, if those are elevated, can tell us that there is inflammation in the liver. If a person has elevated cholesterol, it can tell us that there's some sort of inflammation in the liver for sure. Does that tell us the efficiency of the detox pathways? There's no way to know that except other symptoms. So if I am a toxic person because there's other evidence of toxins, meaning like symptoms like rashes and just feeling ill health and having a diagnosis of cancer, then we just want to support those pathways. So it's you don't even need to look at a person's genetics for their detox pathways to know that everybody needs some help with their detox pathways. The truth is that you're detoxing constantly and you want to decrease the amount of toxification that's happening on a constant basis so that you are detoxing at a greater rate than you're toxing. That's not even a word. That you're toxifying yourself. It's probably not a word either. So following, you want to increase your rate of detoxification. So you do everything you can possibly within reason to help support that. So having, getting an ultrasound of your gallbladder to make sure that it's just not a lot of backup there can be helpful, especially if you're going to go there, you have gone through chemo and you've gone through, a lot of toxin, issues in your lifetime. That could be helpful. Okay, questions that you came in. Can you please discuss the value of effectiveness of the foot detox? So I think I touched on that a little bit. I think that can be beneficial. I've told all of you that personally, I don't do that at all anymore. When I was really sick, I did that a few times at the office, but I just told somebody today that I don't think I ever did it at home. Is it because I didn't think there's value in it? No, it's just that you have to weigh out what you can do. When I was doing, my sauna, I was doing the PEMF, I was doing the Rife constantly. And plus I was working full time, you just have to weigh out. Plus I had a life to live and I have a bunch of grandkids and kids and wife to tend to. And, you have to weigh what you can do. I didn't want treating my cancer to become a god in my life. So some things had to go, and doing the Ion Pro Wave, sorry, true, right? But I didn't do it. But some of you think, oh wow, I just find so much value in that. It really helps. Well, then by all means do that. So you gotta weigh out what's gonna be best for you. If you haven't done it yet, I would do it and see how you like it. Some people love it, just absolutely love it, and continue to do it. So we have people on this call maybe that do it every single day because they think it just helps them so much. So, is the microwave evil? Since I am on a low histamine diet and immediately freeze leftover food, I use it to defrost so I don't have to cook every day. I also make big batches of my coffee enema and warm it in the microwave. Is this okay? Well, this is my opinion. So I use the microwave, you know, uh, you know, a couple of my kids don't have a microwave in their house. But my wife and I use the microwave. And yes, does it use waves that heat the coffee, or the food, whatever you're heating up, um, at a high level, and could it denature the proteins? And that's basically what the argument is it could denature the proteins in the food, and it doesn't. But it's again, it's like the ion pro wave. It's like you can't, we do a lot of things right. Okay. I think my wife and I and our family do a lot of things right. But if we, you see these Instagram posts of these people that are into healthy living, and it's like, are you kidding? Is this how you actually live? Can anybody, this is your whole focus is on, don't do this and do this and don't do this and don't do this. Your anxiety level must be through the blasted roof. It's like you kind of settle down and calm down and go, okay, well, this is a choice I'm going to make. We're going to use the microwave. Maybe someday I'll go, hey, we're not going to use the microwave. We're going to use this. And but the truth is, we heat up leftover food all the time in the microwave, and I have to heat up my coffee at the office 3 times in the microwave because every time I make a cup of coffee, I drink a little bit of it, and then it sits there, and I forget about it, and I go heat it up in the microwave, and it sits in the microwave for an hour because I forgot I put it in the microwave. So you have to weigh things out on what you can do and can't do. Yeah, in a perfect world, would we not use the microwave? No, but probably not. But in the world that we live in, I probably shouldn't be on the computer all day. It's probably not good for my brain either, but I have to because that's what I do. So you have to weigh those things out. Should liposomal glutathione be taken with a meal with fat in it for better absorption? No. You can take it anytime. It is a liposomal. So by definition, liposomal nutrients are wrapped in a fat. So you don't need to take it with a fatty meal to absorb it. Plus, it's very small. You don't really need a lot of bile to help absorb it either. You have enough already in the gut, even for those without a gallbladder, and you'll secrete lipase from your pancreas as well. I used to be on zeolite and put that in my greens first drink since it was discontinued. So this person's talking about a product called zeolite. It was actually with a Z, I think, from Premier Research Lab. So since that was discontinued, so Premier's Research doesn't have that product anymore, I've been on Ultra Binder. Someone recently said that charcoal can bind to nutrients too, and not just to toxins. Should I take the Ultra Binder separate from the green drink? Yes. So technically, you should take your binders on an empty stomach. Um, it's good to take a binder in the morning and in the evening. Zeolite does act as a binder, but you're not taking zeolite in. So on the Ultra Binder, I would say, yeah, take that. Don't mix it with the greens. That would be perfect. Again, some people just mix all their stuff together and take it twice a day if they can, once a day if they can't. You just have to have a balance in your life. Yeah, in a perfect world, take your binders away from food. That's the best way to do it. I've been having issues with insomnia for the last 4 to 6 months. I've tried magnesium threonate. So this magnesium L-threonate is the way it's bound, also is calming to the brain, the threonate part. And magnesium glycinate without success. It seems that when I went to a more of a plant-based diet, less meat, the insomnia began. So, THC works, but I really don't want to become dependent. Any recommendations? So, so there's multiple reasons why a person can't fall asleep, or they fall asleep and they wake up and they can't stay asleep. One has to do with cortisol levels. So, which I didn't talk about earlier about insomnia. This is a big issue with insomnia, and more commonly with the inability to get back to sleep once the person wakes up, if they have to get up to go to the bathroom or something. They can't fall back asleep. That is more of a cortisol issue. And that has to do with stress, dealing with stress in your life, dealing with the anxiety in your heart is really, really important. That's the best way to handle cortisol. But one little trick can be to eat some protein before you go to bed. So eat a piece of chicken before you go to bed and see if that makes a difference. Do that for a week. Eat half a chicken breast before you go to bed and see if that makes a difference, and give that a try. Also, what can help if stress is your issue is using adaptogens. So we talked a lot about adaptogens. Adaptogens can be very calming, and I know different adaptogenic blends can have GABA in it. So I mentioned GABA before. GABA technically isn't an adaptogenic herb. GABA is a neurotransmitter. It's a calming neurotransmitter, but it is commonly in different adaptogenic nutrient blends. I have added using a rebounder to my fitness routine. Anything else that will help my lymph nodes do their job? As you know, I'm trying to get them to be clear when they take a few during my upcoming surgery. Well, your lymph nodes, your lymph vessels do not have heart that pumps the lymph through them. Your lymph nodes and your lymph vessels rely on contraction of your muscles. So using your muscles, contracting, doing some weights, doing any muscle contracting things can be helpful. Moving your body is the biggest thing. That's going to help your lymph vessels. How high a dose of melatonin? Well, typically a person will take 3 milligrams of melatonin to help fall asleep. They can go up to 9 to 12 milligrams to help fall asleep. But that's really not a cancer, killer dose melatonin. Cancer killer dose melatonin is usually about 60 to 180 milligrams of melatonin. The higher dose melatonin doesn't really help you fall asleep anymore. So typically it's recommended that you start with just 3 milligrams if you're just taking it for sleep. You start with 3 milligrams of melatonin to help you fall asleep. But if it's taking 4 or 5 hours for you to fall asleep, make sure you're dealing with some of the other things that we talked about here too. How do I know if my intestines have been damaged by the antibiotics? You'd have to do those Cyrex panels that we talked about, those Cyrex blood tests, the 2, the 3X, the 4, and the 10, the array, Cyrex array 2, array 3X, array 4, and array 10. That's how you would know definitively the health of your intestinal walls. Where would you suggest to start with curing cystic acne? It's really depends on the person's budget. So if you had the budget, I would run those tests, but that could cost you $1,000 in those tests. They're not cheap tests, and your insurance is not going to cover those. If that's not in your budget, I would start with trying to heal the gut with removing any things that are possibly causing damage. So you start by, if you're making the assumption that a person has, increased permeability of their epithelial cells of their gut, or leaky gut issues, damaged gut walls, there's a reason. It's because of the dose of antibiotic. Then there is going to be inflammatory cytokines that are going to be developed from that. And there's going to be, because of the leaky gut, there's going to be antibodies to different foods. And again, the most common ones are what I suggested: gluten, getting rid of all gluten in your diet, looking at gluten cross reactants, which is dairy, corn, things like that. But you can't just go on such a restrictive diet that you can't eat anything. So make sure you're eating a lot of different types of vegetables. But you really want to know what those things are. That's why you do those tests. And then just maybe doing some things that will help heal the gut. Start with the simplest: deglycerated licorice, slippery elm, things like that. We have a product called GI, Clear GI, that can be helpful, that has a powder that has all that gut healing things in it. It's actually my 17-year-old son who has the cystic acne. Well, then you should do a case review for your 17-year-old son. We really shouldn't be asking a lot of questions for our family members on this chat. So that's not appropriate in some cases. So. All right, well, we will call it a night. Thanks for being on, and thanks for another great questions that I think were going to be helpful for everybody. So know that I'm praying for all of you. And if you have to make an appointment with me, feel free to give Maureen or Angie a call and do so, and I'll make myself available. Bye-bye.